So just want to just welcome everybody to the presentation today. And this information session is for everyone who's been selected for 2022 QA assessment. My name is Dina Vaidhiraj, and I'm one of the advanced practice consultants at the CNO, and I'm also a registered nurse. I'm joined today by some of my colleagues who you'll hear from shortly. I just wanted to take a moment to start off by thanking you all for making the time to join the webinar today. We appreciate that it's a very busy time, and we want to thank you for your commitment to patient safety and, of course, for your ongoing professional development. So our discussion today is divided into two sections. The first section is for all selected members, RNs, RPNs, and nurse practitioners. We'll spend the first 20 minutes or so providing you with a brief overview of QA's current program, and then dive into the QA assessment activities. We'll also discuss the coaching support available to you, and you'll have an opportunity to hear from a peer coach about what that coaching support looks like. We'll then spend some time answering your questions. And after the question and answers are complete, RNs and RPNs will leave the Zoom meeting. The second section is for nurse practitioners only. We'll then review the NP case example tool and answer any questions you may have. At the end of our information session, you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions. So since microphones have been muted, kindly send us your questions using the Q&A function. To use that function, please select Q&A from the menu bar at the bottom of your screen. Type in your questions in the text box at any time. We'll address your questions at the end. So as many of you know, the College of Nurses is the governing body for registered nurses, registered practical nurses, and nurse practitioners in Ontario. Nursing is a self-regulating profession. So to be self-regulating means that nurses recognize that they have the knowledge, skill, and expertise to regulate themselves as individual practitioners and to regulate their profession. So the purpose of the college is to protect the public by promoting safe nursing practice. And we do this by establishing requirements for entering the profession. We create and promote practice standards, and these are the minimum requirements and expectations of nursing practice. We enforce the standards of practice and conduct, and we also administer CNO's quality assurance program. So the purpose of the quality assurance program is the Regulated Health Professions Act. It requires CNO to establish and administer a quality assurance program that assists nurses in maintaining competence and continually evaluating their practice. All nurses registered with CNO in the general and extended classes are expected to participate in the QA program. Nurses maintain and enhance their competence through daily practice reflection, lifelong learning, and by integrating that learning into their practice. As practicing nurses, QA is integral in ensuring the public receives safe, quality, and ethical care. So every year, CNO randomly selects nurses to participate in the QA assessment. All of you participating in today's webinar were randomly selected to participate in the 2022 QA assessment program. A notification letter explaining your selection and the assessment activities was sent to each of you. So you're all required to complete two activities, the learning plan and the code of conduct practice activity. Nurse practitioners have an additional requirement to reflect their extended scope of practice. NPs are also required to complete the NP case example. The submission deadline for all activities is June 6, 2022, unless you've been granted an extension or a deferral. So before we speak to the QA activities, we just want to take a moment to acknowledge the exceptional circumstances the pandemic has brought and continues to bring to the nursing profession. We want to take this opportunity to thank you for the important role that you're playing to your patients and their families, and for continuing to demonstrate your ongoing commitment to safe, quality patient care. We also recognize that these difficult and challenging times have likely impacted your practice in unexpected ways. So in light of the ongoing impact of the pandemic, our QA assessment activities are focused around reflecting on your own practice and applying the standards. Coaching support is also available after you submit your activities to help guide you through the process. In addition, CNO has implemented a policy which can grant you a one-time 4-week extension to those who may need a little bit more time to complete the activity. Additionally, members who are facing extenuating circumstances like illness may also request a deferral to the next QA cycle. We'll speak a bit more to the extensions and deferrals shortly. I'm now going to speak about the QA activities, and I'll start with the learning plan. The instructions you need to complete your learning plan can be found on page 4 of your QA assessment guide, which you'll find in your folder on SharePoint. You'll also see that all of the required activities, including the QA assessment template, which contains the learning plan, has been uploaded to your SharePoint folder. You will need to submit 2 learning goals and ensure that all the fields are filled out before you submit it to CNO. We also encourage you to review the evaluation criteria, which can be found on page 8 of the guide. If you have any specific questions about the learning plan, please let us know during the Q&A session. I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Kathy Tersini, who will speak about the Code of Conduct practice activity.
Thank you, Dina, and good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Tersini, and I'm one of the advanced practice consultants here at CNO, and I'm also a registered nurse. The second activity that all nurses are required to complete is the Code of Conduct practice activity. The Code of Conduct practice activity is the Code of Conduct practice standard is a broad and overarching practice standard and is one of the practice standards to which all nurses are accountable and are expected to uphold. It outlines what the people of Ontario can expect from nurses and sets the bar for those in the nursing profession. All nurses selected for QA assessment will be required to complete the Code of Conduct practice activity. This activity gives you an opportunity to demonstrate that you understand the principles outlined in the code and that you apply them in your practice. Everyone is required to submit 2 examples that demonstrate 2 different principles of the Code of Conduct. We recognize that nursing practice is very diverse. So while some principles may better reflect a role that involves direct patient care, other principles may be easily demonstrated in any nursing role. The Code of Conduct applies to all nurses, regardless of where you work or what your role looks like. So let's take a closer look at the requirements of the Code of Conduct practice activity. The Code of Conduct consists of 6 principles. Under each principle are a set of statements. For example, the first principle in the code is nurses respect the dignity of patients and treat them as individuals. You are encouraged to start by reviewing each of the 6 principles along with the accompanying statements and select the one that best reflects your day-to-day practice. Think of an interaction, experience, or event from your practice where you demonstrated that principle. Your example does not need to cover every statement that falls under the principle, but your example should be about at least one of those statements. For example, you might select principle number 1 and provide a specific example from your practice where you showed respect to a patient's culture, identity, beliefs, values, and goals. Here are some key points to remember about your Code of Conduct submission. Provide 1 example per principle. Your example must be based on a specific interaction, experience, or event in your practice, from your practice, not a generalization of your practice. Provide enough detail that your peer coach reading your submission can determine that you understand the principle and how you applied it in your practice. You'll find it helpful to review the Code of Conduct practice activity examples that are provided. The next slide will show you where you can access those examples. Additionally, the example you provide must be from your own practice. So use I or my statements. Do not provide a hypothetical situation or something that could happen or generalization. In other words, don't talk about what you would do, talk about what you did do. We want to hear what you have to say. And lastly, review your example before you submit. Make sure it fits under the correct principle and that it meets the submission criteria outlined on page 8 of your guide. As mentioned, we've created a resource page specifically for nurses selected to participate in QA assessment. On this page, there are examples of completed learning plans, code of conduct practice activities, and the NP case examples available. You'll also find available information on how to navigate your SharePoint folder. You can find a link to this resource page in your selection letter and in your QA assessment guide, which is in your SharePoint folder. Again, you are strongly encouraged to review the resources and examples on the web page before you upload your final documents to SharePoint. So to further protect our data, CNO has added an additional layer of security in the form of a multi-factor authentication. All members will be required to provide an additional method of authentication to access their file, similar to how you would authenticate bank passwords. You can find the link to guides to help you walk through the multi-factor authentication process in your email notification letter. If you have trouble with this process and need assistance during business hours, please contact our information security line. Guides and support are available if you require support submitting your documents. Our advanced practice consultants are available throughout the program to provide clarification and guidance on the requirements of the QA activities, as well as information on deferrals and extensions. If you would like to consult with one of the advanced practice consultants for support or guidance before the June 6th deadline, you can email the QA program and one of the QA members will be in touch with you. Once the June 6th deadline is passed and you have submitted your QA assessment activities, CNO will assign a peer coach to review and assess your submission. You'll have the option to book a coaching session after this. We are very fortunate this morning to have one of our peer coaches here today. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Janet Montague, who is a registered nurse, and she will speak more about her role as a peer coach with CNO, as well as provide more information about coaching support and what this looks like.
Thank you, Kathy. Hello, everyone. My name is Janet Montague, and I have been a peer coach with CNO for 13 years. My role as a peer coach is to review and assess your QA activities and provide feedback. This includes the learning plan and code of conduct practice activities. Peer coaches who are nurse practitioners will be matched with nurse practitioner members and will also review and assess the nurse practitioner case example. After reviewing your activities, I will complete a peer coach report for you, which outlines the results of your activities and provides feedback. The results of the report also goes to the Quality Assurance Committee. My completed report will include my assessment. That is, if your activities are satisfactory, or if I need more information to make an assessment. I may also recommend that you participate in optional coaching to assist you with resubmitting your activities satisfactorily. You might be wondering, what is the benefit of coaching and why should I do it? As Kathy mentioned, coaching support with a peer coach is available after you have submitted your activities and have received your peer coach report with feedback. Coaching is optional and is available to provide support to members who have been directed by QAC to resubmit their activities. Coaching is also available to those members who have successfully exited the program, but just want additional feedback on their submissions. Coaching sessions are virtual and can be booked directly with your peer coach. We have some findings from our 2021 QA program evaluation that members who participated in coaching had very positive experiences and would recommend it to others. My experience as a peer coach was very positive and rewarding. It was good to connect and collaborate with members on a personal level in finding out what would be most helpful or important to them during the coaching sessions, so that by the end of the session, they could feel more confident with the resubmissions. Some of the feedback that I have received from members who participated in the coaching sessions were that the sessions were very helpful in clarifying what they needed to work on and to resubmit. They did not feel alone in the QA process. They felt confident in revising and resubmitting by the due date. They were more aware of the resources or activities that they could use to help them in achieving their goals, and they were very grateful and appreciative of the support. One member stated that she was so happy that she had decided to do the coaching session. Also, in 2021, 100% of members who participated in coaching were able to successfully resubmit their activities and exit the QA program. This goes to show that coaching really helps to provide that extra support, guidance, and clarity needed to complete the QA activities while demonstrating application of the standards in practice. I'll answer any questions you have about coaching during the Q&A session, but for now, I'll turn it back over to Kathy.
Thank you again, Janet, for providing that overview on the peer coach role and coaching support. As we mentioned earlier, given the pandemic, you may be able to delay your participation in QA assessment if you have an exceptional circumstance. Extensions are granted based on members' unique situations and will allow a member a one-time 4-week extension. To request an extension, please contact the QA program. If you want to request a deferral, you must complete and submit a deferral form and provide supporting documentation to the QA committee. The committee will review your submissions and decide if you can delay your participation. To request a deferral, send an email to the QA program and we will send you the deferral form and additional instructions. There is more information about the extension and deferrals on page 7 of your guide. So to summarize, please review your QA assessment guide along with the resources mentioned in this presentation. The deadline for all your submissions is June 6, 2022, unless you've been granted an extension of 4 weeks or a deferral. For questions or support, please contact the QA program. And the email's here, qaassessment@cnomail.org, or you can call us at the number on the slide, 416-963-3922.
That concludes the first section of our presentation. If you are an RN or an RPN, feel free to exit the meeting now. The following section is specifically for NPs. So now I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague, Christine, who will introduce the NP case example activity.
Cindy. So hello, everyone. I'm Christine Turnbull. I'm an advanced practice consultant with CNO, and I'm also a nurse practitioner with an adult specialty certificate. So in addition to the learning plan and the code of conduct practice activity, NP selected for QA assessment will be required to provide a case example from their clinical practice. So the NP case example tool, which we have an example of on the slide, is based on the nurse practitioner practice standard, which describes the accountability specific to nurse practitioners in Ontario. The purpose of the activity is to provide NPs with an opportunity to demonstrate how their clinical practice aligns with the NP standard. Next slide, please. So the NP standard has 6 standard statements with accompanying indicators. And so for the purpose of the case example activity, the focus will be only on the 4 listed on this slide. And that includes health assessment, diagnosis, therapeutic management, and collaboration, consultation, and referral. The case example tool includes embedded questions within each section to allow the NP to demonstrate clinical reasoning and reflection. Not every section of the tool will apply to every NP's case example, therefore not applicable is permitted. Your submission will be evaluated by a peer coach who is also an NP. Please note that this case example assessment is not a test of your clinical knowledge. We recognize that NPs have a wide range of expertise across diverse practice settings. This is a tool that allows an NP to demonstrate how their clinical practice aligns with the NP standard. However, the peer coach should see the application of the NP standard in your case example. So for example, advanced health assessment, ordering tests, diagnosis, engagement with the patient, and evidence-based practice. The peer coach should also be able to follow your rationale and clinical reasoning throughout. Next slide, please. Thank you. As well, just as a reminder, there are a list of examples of completed NP case examples on the webpage, which you can review as you can see on this slide. Links to examples can also be found on page 3 of your NP case example tool completion guide and page 5 of your QA assessment guide. And we encourage you to review these examples.
So that concludes our presentation today. If you require any further support, feel free to contact us, the QA team, at the email and phone number provided, and we hope you enjoy your evening. Thank you for joining us.